So I said, well, why is it that the Germans seem to be quite disciplined about this? And they said, well, first they have a terrible memory of hyperinflation, so they know that central banks printing money is not the solution. Second, issuing debt is not the solution because eventually the debt will catch up on you and someone has to pay for it. And the someone will be your future generation. And the German citizens have many of them, not all, have a very strong sense that the future matters. That one of the best legacy you can leave our children is first a good education, and second, leave them free to pursue things. That if you burden them with a lot of debt, they are going to be in trouble. And you see that in many different societies. You just look at the debt burden. It is always easier to pass on something to a generation that's not yet born to say that that's your problem in the future. Right? And in many of the governance system in the world and in many different governments in the world, it's always easier to pass on the problem than to deal with the problem today. So that's something which I hope that we would avoid, because someone else would have to pay for it. So I thought that the German ethos, this value system that they have, whereby I think I hear many of you mentioning that this sense of personal responsibility and this sense of focus on the family, I think it remains a very important pillar of a successful society. Now, many of you also raised about issues which government would have to look at. For instance, the choices that we can make between having retirement villages versus aging in place. And retirement villages has its pros, has its cons. Aging in place is an important means, and the question is, how do we make aging in place more feasible? I think some of you mentioned about potential contradictions in policy. That we say we are going to encourage aging in place, but how come? I think you all raised two important points. One is about the property tax issue, and the other one is how come the senior citizens activity corner that you see around you don't seem to be very appealing. I have to tell you that last week I had a session with my own constituents, and that day, so they also told me that, hey, Mr. Heng, we need to upgrade our senior citizens activity. And in a very interesting way, they raised a very similar suggestion that you had, which is, I said, well, actually we understand the needs of our senior citizens better. So instead of waiting for someone else to plan it, we can come together and plan this. We can come together and look at what activities would appeal to all of us, to make it interesting and for all of us. And I said, good, let's think about it. Let's think about how we can develop this theme further. That we have many meaningful things to do, and many of you have, looking at the programs that you have been embarking on, whether to serve fellow senior citizens or to serve the younger generation, you have some really powerful programs here. So I would certainly encourage you to think about how we can do more, because to create many more avenues for senior citizens to continue to grow, mentally, emotionally, socially, to build a wider network of friends, to continue contributing. And I think one of your mission vision statement about how actually in many ways contributing to the well-being of others enhances our own well-being, and having a social network like this enhances our sense of belonging and our sense of community, which in turn is very powerful for health. So I thought this is a very, very interesting set of discussion. Now, you have some very specific ideas in other areas of housing, healthcare, transport. I think those are important issues that we have to think about. But I really like the fact that so many of you come up with very interesting ideas about what we can do as individuals. I hear many of you talk about healthy lifestyle, about planning for the future, about financial planning and so on. And talking about planning early, which I think is quite critical. What we can do together as a community, as a group like this, and together with other community, other DWOs, and then things which governments can do to set a framework, to catalyze, to provide certain kinds of resources. And I think if we can do it well, we can be a society that, yes, we may be aging rapidly, but the aging need not be in a sort of frail, decrepit sense, but rather it can be in a sort of active, energetic way. I should also mention that one of the very interesting, our first committee meeting of the Singapore Conversation, one idea that came out was, in 2030, the newspaper headline that I would like to see is Singapore hosts the Olympics for the seniors. So we sat down and said, we asked the group, why is it that you think that Singapore holds the Olympics for the senior? And they said, well, and when we reflected on it, we thought it reflected two very interesting things about us. One is that, we love to be open to the world, that we want to do something significant in the world. We don't want to be just an unknown little red dot. We want to be a known little red dot. We can do things, we can host Olympics. But more importantly, I think it speaks to our desire to have an energetic, vigorous population, even as our population grows older. That we don't have to think of aging as in the old sense. And in fact, again, going back to the days when I first joined the service almost 30 years ago, that indeed there were many of the seniors that by the time they reach 55, they say, oh, I'm going to retire and I'm going to take my CPF and I'm going to do nothing. And they do become frail very early on. And I think today's 70-year-old is more like yesterday's 50-year-old. And I think as our healthcare improves, as we take better care of ourselves, I think we'll see many more energetic seniors. And not only energetic, but energetic seniors who have a big heart and a lot to contribute to the rest of our society. So I want to thank you very much for this very interesting session. I really enjoyed it, and I'm very happy to see many friends here whom we have worked together in the past, whether in the police, in the MOE, or in the ministries. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heng. On closing, I'm going to invite the President of RSVP, Heng, to come forward to say some closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Very good afternoon, good evening now. Thank you, Minister Heng. I think I have nothing much to say. The Minister more or less summed up most of the point. And I would like to end with this thing that I say all the time. Senior is not a burden to the society, it's an asset. Okay, which is very important, and in fact, I want to inculcate this in our young, that we are here, especially RSVP, to serve and to share our experience with our future generations. I think with that, thank you all for participating today.
Just a bit of announcement. There are ongoing OSC conversations going on in the public, and you can actually secure the website over there. Do sign up for a session. There is also a Facebook. You can go online, feedback. Now, what's going to happen here is that although you did some presentation, all these charts that you have written down will be captured. Alright, will be captured. The OSC Secretary Committee will be here to collect them back and then collect them all together and feedback to the main channel. Right? So no ideas here are forsaken. Every idea is being collected in here. So at the end, it says on behalf of the OSC Secretary as well as the mentioned RSVP, I thank everyone here for not just saying but doing for being here. Right? Thank everybody here. Wonderful job.